Thank you for viewing the budget tabling presentation for the 2021 Annual Budget Update. There are two documents for the 2021 Annual Budget Update: the Property Tax Supported Budget and the Water and Wastewater and Treatment Budget. Both documents are accessible online at www.london.ca/budget. This presentation is intended to provide a refresher on the City's multi-year budget process and the types of budget amendments, a recap of the approved 2020 to 2023 property tax supported multi-year budget, a discussion on the application of the equity and inclusion and gender equity lenses on the 2021 budget, an overview of proposed 2021 budget amendments, a summary of the tabled 2021 property tax supported budget, a discussion on other anticipated added budget amendments, an overview of a process for further budget reductions, an overview of the water and wastewater and treatment budgets, a discussion of the impacts of COVID-19 on the 2021 budget, key dates in the budget process, and an overview of public engagement activities. This slide provides a graphical depiction of the multi-year budget process at the City of London. We are in the second year of the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget cycle. This represents the first annual update to the multi-year budget. Any changes to the multi-year budget are accompanied by a budget amendment that outlines the rationale for the change to the multi-year budget. Budget amendments fall into three categories: new or changed regulations or legislation with a financial impact to the municipality, new council direction that has transpired after the approval of the multi-year budget, or a cost or revenue driver as a result of changes in economic conditions. This slide recaps the planned tax levy increases for the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget after approval of the multi-year budget in March 2020. The planned tax levy increase for 2021 prior to this annual update was 4.4%, with a forecasted average annual tax levy increase of 3.8% across the multi-year budget period. This would represent an average annual property owner impact of $116 per year based on an average residential property with an assessed value of $241,000 in 2019. At the September 22, 2020 meeting of the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee, Civic Administration recommended the development of a new anti-racism and anti-oppression lens. As an interim step, while the new anti-racism and anti-oppression lens is being built, the 2021 budget amendments were reviewed by the Anti-Racism and Anti-Oppression Internal Working Group using the existing Equity and Inclusion Handbook and Gender Equity Lens. Comments from the working group are included in each budget amendment. The Anti-Racism and Anti-Oppression Internal Working Group also made a series of general observations and recommendations for future improvements in the application of the Anti-Racism and Anti-Oppression lens. These can be found on page 15 of the Property Tax Supported Budget document. The 2021 budget update represents the first steps in this process. Future enhancements to the process will include utilizing enhanced screening tools as they are developed, such as the new anti-racism and anti-oppression lens, expanding the application of the new anti-racism and anti-oppression lens to other aspects of the budget, for example, base budgets, additional investment business cases, business plans, etc., and applying other lenses as they are developed, for example, the climate emergency screening tool. There are 8 budget amendments included in the 2021 budget update, 6 operating budget amendments, and 2 capital budget amendments. The first budget amendment relates to RBC Place London. RBC Place has been experiencing significant financial challenges due to the inability to host events. At the June 29, 2020 Council meeting, Council approved a 1-year deferral of the 2020 payment owing on RBC Place's outstanding note payable to the City of London. Through Budget Amendment Number 1, RBC Place is seeking forgiveness of the remaining loan. This amendment does not have a tax levy impact, however, it would be expected to reduce the future inflows into the Efficiency, Effectiveness, and Economy Reserve, which was the original funding source for this loan. Budget Amendment Number 4 relates to childcare. Additional funding for childcare was approved through the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget for the ongoing operating costs associated with the expansion of licensed childcare spaces. With the onset of COVID-19, the construction of the new childcare centers has been delayed, and therefore the required funding will not be necessary in 2021. It should be noted that this funding will remain in the budget as approved in 2022 and future years. This is only a one-time reduction. Budget Amendment number 5 relates to the Middlesex London Health Unit. As part of the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget, increased municipal funding was approved related to provincial cost-sharing changes for public health. The Ministry of Health recently announced that additional mitigation funding is available to fully offset increased costs to municipalities in both 2020 and 2021. It should be noted, however, that this is a one-time reduction and significant uncertainty exists regarding public health funding in 2022 and beyond. Budget Amendment number 6 relates to Ontario Works. Through the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget, Council approved additional funding for the Ontario Works program due to provincial funding changes. With the onset of COVID-19, the various relief and recovery benefits offered by the Government of Canada has meant that the Ontario Works program has experienced a decrease in employment-related expenses and anticipates this reduction to continue in 2021. Once again, this is a one-time reduction in 2021 only. With respect to Budget Amendment number 7, an internal service review conducted last year determined that the full costs associated with the corporate services providing support to the water, wastewater, and joint water board service areas were not being fully recovered. Increased costs were reflected in the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budgets for water, wastewater, and the joint water boards, but due to timing constraints were not reflected in the property tax supported multi-year budget. This amendment reflects a permanent increase in revenue and therefore a reduction to the tax levy in the tax-supported budget. Regarding Budget Amendment number 8, the Corporation maintains a contingency budget which is frequently reviewed to ensure that it is sufficient for known and anticipated expenditures. Civic Administration reviewed the corporate contingency budget and identified savings, noting that we believe this reduction can be managed despite the anticipated COVID-19 financial pressures facing the City of London in 2021. As previously mentioned, there are 2 capital budget amendments this year, neither of which have a tax levy impact. Budget Amendment number 2 reflects some minor adjustments to RBC Place London's capital plan based on a building condition assessment that was conducted earlier in 2020. Budget Amendment number 3 reflects unanticipated repairs required to the fire suppression system at the Material Recovery Facility, which is advancing funds in the capital plan to 2021 in order to complete this work. Incorporating the 8 budget amendments I've summarized in this presentation results in a reduction to the 2021 tax levy from 4.4% to 3.8%. Collectively, these amendments also reduce the 4-year average tax levy increase slightly, but the 4-year average tax increase remains at a rounded 3.8% on average. This slide provides a high-level overview of the capital plan, noting that the only changes to the capital plan are the 2 budget amendments I've previously discussed. It should also be noted that the capital plan incorporates all changes outlined in the 2021 Development Charges Update. There are also some other budget amendments that may be forthcoming prior to budget deliberations. First, at the Council meeting on November 10th, Council endorsed the preparation of a budget amendment to support implementation of the Film and Multimedia Strategy as per the report to the Community and Protective Services Committee on November 3rd. Second, at the Civic Works Committee meeting on November 17th, an update report on the 60% Waste Diversion Action Plan was provided, including an updated implementation schedule, funding requirements, and a proposed budget amendment to be forwarded to budget deliberations. There are also a couple of other matters that Civic Administration is aware of that may affect the 2021 budget update. Specifically, number 1, a report to the Middlesex London Health Unit's November 5th Finance and Facilities Committee meeting outlining anticipated 2021 cost pressures totaling approximately $700,000. It is not yet clear whether these cost pressures will be the responsibility of Middlesex London Health Unit's municipal funding partners, and additional information is expected after the Board of Health meeting on November 26th. Civic Administration is also awaiting confirmation of the 2021 land ambulance budget from the County of Middlesex. This is anticipated in late November. This slide presents a summary of the tax levy impact in the event that Council approves the additional 60% Waste Diversion Action Plan budget amendment. This budget amendment would reduce the 2021 tax levy increase to 3.5%, noting that the 4-year average tax levy increase remains at 3.8% rounded. The graphic on this slide outlines the process that Civic Administration recommends should Council wish to reconsider any of the budget decisions made through the 2020 to 2023 multi-year budget. This process would essentially involve working in reverse order of the budget deliberations that occurred earlier this year. We have included Appendix H in the property tax supported budget document, which will assist Council in working through this process if they wish to do so. In considering further reductions to the budget, we would encourage Council to keep in mind a number of the COVID-19 response and recovery principles utilized over the past year. Number one, the need to continue to deliver essential and vital services and to adjust those services to comply with provincial orders and social distancing requirements. Number two, balance service levels with fiscal pressures. Number three, prioritize service delivery supporting economic recovery and for those most vulnerable. Number four, take temporary and one-time actions to address pressures to minimize long-term impacts. And number five, minimize impact on strategic priorities. Similarly, in considering further reductions to the budget, we would encourage Council to also take into consideration a number of the city's long-standing financial principles. One-time funding is appropriate to fund one-time costs, but should not be used to implement permanent programs with ongoing costs. Alternate sources of revenue should be considered to cover only those expenses that are linked to them, to ensure that this funding is not required to support other expenses in the event that the funding is reduced or eliminated. Council should avoid taking on services or programs where there is pressure to fill in for services or programs that are generally the responsibility of other levels of government. When considering new initiatives, Council should consider the total cost of the initiative, both one-time and ongoing operating costs, cash flow requirements, and benefits to the community. Council should avoid taking on more or new services without considering long-term exit strategies. The City of London should determine its own capital priorities. New infrastructure programs introduced by the federal and provincial governments should be assessed relative to the capital needs and priorities of the city and ability to fund these initiatives. We should ensure that reserves and reserve funds are kept at an adequate level to ensure the corporation maintains sufficient liquidity, and debt is appropriate for certain large-scale growth and service improvement capital projects, but should generally be avoided for life cycle renewal capital projects. Moving on to the water budget, this slide provides a high-level overview of the water budget, noting that there are no budget amendments for this service. Council has already approved the 2021 to 2023 rates for water on October 27, 2020. With respect to the proposed 2021 wastewater and treatment budget, there are no proposed budget amendments for this service. Once again, 2021 to 2023 rates for wastewater were approved by Council on October 27, 2020. Without a doubt, we anticipate that COVID-19 will continue to have a significant impact on the City of London's 2021 budget. Our current estimates of that impact are at least $20 million, with more than $11 million of that figure being the projected financial impact to London Transit. Also, a financial sustainability review is currently underway for RBC Place London, which will provide greater insight into the anticipated impacts of COVID-19 on that organization and potential funding support required moving forward. This slide outlines how we intend to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on our 2021 budget. One of the themes of the 2021 budget is that we don't yet know which financial challenges will be permanent in nature, and therefore the 2021 budget avoids premature budget changes pending further experience to assess longer-term COVID-19 financial impacts. Civic Administration intends to use a variety of strategies to mitigate COVID financial impacts in 2021, much like we did in 2020. These could include temporary adjustments to service levels, deferral of capital projects and/or adjustments to sources of financing for capital projects, strategic one-time draws from reserves or reserve funds to mitigate temporary one-time financial impacts, and continued advocacy for federal and provincial government support for COVID-related financial pressures. Civic Administration will actively monitor the Corporation's 2021 financial position and will report to Council with recommended strategies to address any budgetary pressures. This slide outlines key dates in this year's budget process, with budget tabling occurring on November 17th, a public participation meeting scheduled for December 7th at 4:00 p.m. at the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee. Budget deliberations will occur on December 10th and December 11th at the Strategic Priorities and Policy Committee starting at 9:30 a.m. Final Council approval of the 2021 annual budget update is anticipated at the Council meeting on January 12, 2021, starting at 4 p.m. This slide outlines our planned public engagement activities for the 2021 budget update, noting that COVID-19 has limited our ability to conduct in-person public engagement this year. Despite that challenge, we are moving forward with an engagement plan that utilizes a number of different channels, including some new methods of engaging with Londoners this year. The various means of engagement will include social media, digital advertising and digital newsletters, radio advertising, print advertising, use of the getinvolved.london.ca website, email updates via newsletter, which you can sign up for on the getinvolved.london.ca website, a public participation meeting, support for councillors' engagement activities as requested, virtual meetings with community groups as requested, phone calls to 519-661-4638, or emails to budget@london.ca. Thank you for viewing our tabling presentation for the 2021 annual budget update. We would encourage you to reach out to us on social media through Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Also, please feel free to email us at budget@london.ca or contact us through the getinvolved.london.ca website.